Hello, I'm Hat, and welcome to All Hat No Cattle. I'm going to get into details about the First Baptist shooter and a couple of developments, but let's first start with an overview of the event. On Sunday, November 5th, 2017, Devin Patrick Kelly, spelled Kelley, age 26, walked into the First Baptist Church in Sutherland Springs, Texas, about 30 miles southeast of San Antonio, dressed in all black tactical gear, including a ballistic vest capable of stopping a rifle round to the chest. He was carrying a Ruger 5.56 AR-15 style rifle and multiple magazines of ammunition. All of this is legal for most Americans to own. Kelly, not so much. More on that later. He opened fire on parishioners as they attended Sunday services. 26 people were killed, from ages 18 months to 77 years old. One family lost 8 members of 3 generations, 3 grandchildren, their mother, and their grandparents. The mother was 5 months pregnant as well. In my eyes, that makes the number of dead 27. You may disagree. Devin Kelly then left the church. As he was walking away, he was shot through a gap in his body armor by Stephen Williford, who engaged Kelly with an AR-15 of his own. Kelly was badly, perhaps mortally, wounded, but managed to drive away, leading Williford and another man on a high-speed chase. This ended with Kelly crashing after crossing into Guadalupe County. It is reported that Kelly may have turned another gun he had in his possession on himself. He was found dead in his vehicle. I'm sure if I asked you to think of a state that loves its guns, Texas would be in your top 3. Unfortunately, Texas is also home to what is considered the first modern U.S. mass shooting, which was also the first mass school shooting. There was even a mass shooting this September in Plano, Texas, which got very little coverage outside of state news sources. As an aside, I've lived near all 3 of these mass killings, but not when they occurred. I don't believe for a minute that Texas's relationship with guns is related to these shootings. Not in the least. Texas is a huge state, so it's going to have its share of violence. There are a number of states with heavy gun control laws that have their own problems with mass shootings. California, I'm looking at you. I'll open with Texas's first mass shooting. After stabbing his mother-in-law and his wife to death in separate incidents, Charles Whitman, 25, went to the main building on the University of Texas Austin's campus, carrying a large trunk filled with rifles, pistols, a sawed-off shotgun, ammunition, food, water, and other items. After gaining access to the tower elevator using a false ID, he set up a sniper's nest. For 96 minutes, Whitman sprayed the area with deadly accurate fire. He killed 13 people, including 1 unborn child, and injured 31 others. An additional victim died in the hospital, while a final victim died in 2001 from the lingering effects of his wounds. Some of the victims were shot at a distance of nearly 300 yards, a shot very makeable with the right training and the right firearm. Not surprisingly, Whitman was a former Marine. He had been honorably discharged after going through a court-martial. Police ultimately reached Whitman and shot him dead. This shooting is the reason police departments develop special weapons teams, often known as Special Weapons and Tactics Teams, or SWAT, as they are commonly called. At the time of the UT Tower sniper event, police departments did not have any way to respond. They only carried pistols and in some cases shotguns, which were completely ineffective against the shooter in his high perch. One of the ways Austin police were finally able to reach Whitman was his being pinned down by civilians using their own rifles. The Texas Sniper Massacre entered into popular culture with the airing of the 1975 made-for-TV movie The Deadly Tower, starring a young Kurt Russell. I saw this when it aired, and it was, as I remember, quite riveting. The second shooting I'm referring to was a massacre in Plano, Texas on September 11, 2017, while friends were watching the Dallas Cowboys' season opener against the New York Giants. A gunman with multiple weapons barged into his ex-wife's home and shot 9 people, killing 8 of them, at a Texas football watch party Sunday night before police responded and killed the shooter, investigators revealed Monday. 2 people were wounded when the gunman, identified by Fox 4 as Spencer Height, opened fire inside the party at a single-family home off Spring Creek Parkway in Plano, less than 20 minutes from Dallas, around 8 p.m. The 2 wounded victims were transported to the hospital, where one of them later died. Of the 9 shooting victims, only 1 survived. Debbie Lane told WFAA the gunman was her former son-in-law who killed her daughter, Meredith Lane. The mother said the couple recently got divorced after 6 years of marriage, and the man used to own the home where the shooting happened. She was a cook, and quite a fine one, and she loved hosting friends and families, Lane told WFAA. This was her first opportunity to do it after the divorce, and he didn't take it well. Let's now get to the latest developments in the First Baptist Sutherland shooting. First, a possible motive. According to CNN, Kelly had been texting threats to his mother-in-law, including sending her a text the morning of the shooting. She is a member of First Baptist. Her name, as far as I can determine, has not been released. Kelly's widow is listed as Danielle Lee Shields. They were married in April of 2014, 2 years after Devin Kelly's divorce from his first wife. Now some background on Devin Patrick Kelly. Before we read of Kelly's earlier troubles, here's a statement from a relative, one who should know Devin well. Dave Ivey, Kelly's uncle, said in a Facebook message that he never in a million years could have believed Devin could be capable of this kind of thing. That, however, does not jibe with those who also had reason to understand the mind of Kelly. Former classmates at New Braunfels High School described Kelly to KENS as disturbed, judgmental, unfriendly, and unstable. They said his most recent social media posts were dark and indicated he was going through relationship problems and possibly a breakup. 2 ex-girlfriends told NBC News that Kelly stalked them after breakups. Years after dating me, he would try to bribe me to hang out with him, Landry, who met Kelly in church as a teenager, told NBC News in a Facebook message. He ended up assaulting me. He would stalk me by repeatedly calling me, even prank calling me, saying really weird stuff. That was another thing about him. He was very sick in the head. He would tell me very sick, strange things, she said, without providing details. Brittany Adcock, 22, said she dated Kelly for 2 months when she was 13 and he was 18. At the time I didn't think much into it being so young, but now I realize that there's something off about someone who is 18 with someone who is 13, she said. When she broke it off, he continued to harass her, she said. He somehow would always find out my number, although none of my friends talked to him, and he would constantly call me until I blocked his number, she said. Then I'd get calls from an unknown number, so I've had to change my number quite a bit. He would offer me money to hang out with him quite a bit. There has been one point that I called police because he was just calling me so much I wanted to report harassment, Adcock said. One time he told me I should move in with him and his wife and that he would take care of me as long as I walked around topless. Not long after, his wife messaged me and asked why I'm talking to her husband, and I told her what he was saying and sent her screenshots, and she then apologized, and then I was blocked from speaking to her. Devin Kelly joined the Air Force in 2010. He was initially a good worker, but his troubles with relationships became critical during this time. Records confirm Kelly previously served in logistics readiness at Holloman Air Force Base in New Mexico until his discharge in 2014, Air Force spokesperson Ann Stefanik said in a statement. Kelly, who received several service awards during his time with the Air Force, was responsible for moving passengers, cargo, and personal property in military transportation. Kelly was court-martialed in 2012 for 2 counts of assault on his then-wife and assault on her child, Stefanik said. Colonel Don Christensen, a retired Air Force chief prosecutor whose office prosecuted Kelly, told CBS News there were multiple instances in 2011 and 2012 in which Kelly assaulted his then-wife and her son, who was his stepson. Kelly physically assaulted the boy, pushed him down, shook him, and fractured his skull, causing a severe hematoma, Christensen said. Kelly pleaded guilty to diverse occasions of assaulting son and wife, Christensen said. He received a bad conduct discharge and reduction in rank and confinement for 12 months. The Air Force tells CBS News Kelly's case was a general court-martial, the most serious level of military trial proceedings. It is reserved for more serious criminal allegations, those substantially similar to felonies in civilian jurisdictions. While personnel tried under general court-martial can be subject to dishonorable discharge, Kelly received the less severe bad conduct discharge. Federal law prohibits those who have been dishonorably discharged from buying a firearm, but the law does not include a blanket prohibition on those who have received a bad conduct discharge. However, certain types of bad conduct discharges can stem from cases that would bar defendants from purchasing firearms. Texas and federal laws prohibit those with domestic violence convictions from owning firearms. The military is supposed to report to the FBI, for the purposes of prohibiting firearm purchases, convictions on domestic violence charges, as well as convictions that carry maximum potential sentences of more than a year in confinement. It says here next that it is unclear if the FBI was notified about Kelly's case. I'll clear that up in a moment. So how did he get his firearms? None of them were purchased through private sales that I know of, certainly not the Ruger. The reason is simple: failure to communicate. CBS News' David Martin confirms that the U.S. Air Force failed to submit the shooter's criminal history to the FBI as required by Pentagon rules. That history should have barred him from purchasing guns. The Air Force said it has launched a review of how the service handled Kelly's criminal records. Law enforcement went to Kelly's New Braunfels home 3 years ago to investigate a domestic violence complaint involving him and his then-girlfriend. Paul Anthony, a spokesman for the Comal County District's Attorney's Office, told the Associated Press that sheriff's deputies were called just after 10 p.m. on February 1, 2014. Citing a sheriff's office report, Anthony says a friend of Kelly's girlfriend told authorities she received a text message from the girlfriend that indicated her boyfriend was abusing her. When sheriff's deputies arrived at the home, they were told by people in the house that there was no problem. No arrests were made. Kelly married the girlfriend, Danielle Shields, 2 months later. Kelly moved to Colorado later in 2014, registering to vote with an address traced to the Colorado Springs area, home to the U.S. Air Force Academy and other Air Force installations. I've read in another article that this address was a spot in a rather seedy trailer park. Court records in El Paso County indicate Kelly was cited on August 21, 2014, at the mobile home where he lived. The Denver Post reports the citation was for misdemeanor animal cruelty. An El Paso County deputy report obtained by the paper says a woman saw Kelly punch a dog 4 to 5 times near its head and neck, and then grab the dog by the neck and drag it away. Another witness said he saw Kelly pick the dog up into the air and throw it to the ground. A sheriff's sergeant who responded to Kelly's mobile home said he found the dog undernourished. Authorities reportedly took the animal to the veterinary specialty center. Kelly reportedly said he jumped on the dog to keep it from acting aggressively towards another animal, but denied hitting the dog, throwing it to the ground, or carrying it by its neck. He was given a deferred probationary sentence and was ordered to pay $368 in restitution. The cruelty to animals charge was dismissed in March 2016 after Kelly completed his sentence. The Denver Post reports court records indicate someone was granted a protection order against Kelly on January 15, 2015, also in El Paso County. Later on, Kelly moved back to Texas, again living in New Braunfels, about half an hour south of Austin and just north of San Antonio. His ability to hold a job did not improve with his return to the Lone Star State. The San Antonio Express-News reports Kelly had previously worked as a security guard at Schlitterbahn, a New Braunfels water park and resort, a job that required him to pass a criminal background check. A spokeswoman for the park told the paper Kelly spent 5.5 weeks working as a nighttime security guard there beginning in June. He was reportedly terminated from his position. The spokeswoman, Winter Prosapio, said Kelly was unarmed during his brief employment and his duties included checking gate locks at night. Prosapio did not say why he was terminated. Kelly had a security guard license issued by the Texas Department of Public Safety, reports the Express-News. Martin confirmed Kelly had a non-commissioned, unarmed private security license similar to a security guard at a concert-type situation. Martin said Kelly had no disqualifiers to enter into the National Crime Information Center database that would preclude him from receiving a private security license. He said private security background checks include fingerprints and criminal history checks with Texas Crime Info Center and national databases, and Kelly was cleared. Kelly later worked at Summit Vacation and RV Resort in New Braunfels. Manager Claudia Rajabedian told CBS News national correspondent Omar Villafranca that Kelly showed up for work as an overnight security guard Saturday, but left early, leaving behind a note that said he wasn't feeling well and had a headache. Vajrabedian said Kelly did not show up for work on Sunday. She said she intended to fire him. She said she didn't get to know Kelly well, but she never received any complaints about him. No signs of anything, quite polite young man, and that was about it, Vajrabedian told Villafranca. That brings us to now. There are a few things I'd like to cover before I wrap things up. One is what we know about the armed citizen who possibly prevented Devin Kelley from continuing his killing spree. Sharpshooting plumber fired shot that took down Texas church gunman. The man hailed as a hero for confronting the Texas mass shooter during his rampage is a sharpshooting plumber with no military background who hit the gunman through a gap in his body armor, according to a report. Stephen Williford managed to shoot Devin Kelley before jumping into another man's truck and chasing him down, the Daily Mail reported. Kelley blew himself away after wiping out in his SUV, according to Wilson County Sheriff Joe Tackett. Texas Department of Public Safety Chief Freeman Martin said Williford grabbed his rifle and engaged the suspect after Kelley left the First Baptist Church in Sutherland Springs, where he opened fire with an assault rifle. It wasn't an assault rifle, it was an AR-15, and killed 26 people. An area resident told the paper that Williford, an avid biker who attends another church, learned about the shooting when his daughter called to say a man clad in body armor was shooting worshipers. The local said that although Williford has no military background, he didn't hesitate when he came face to face with the suspect and managed to squeeze off a round that struck the gunman, who had dropped his Ruger AR-15 variant. One of the first reactions to the massacre was a statement that raised more than eyebrows on the left. This is from Christianity Today. Sutherland Springs church shooting. Americans should be armed when they pray, warns Texas Attorney General. American Christians should be armed when they go to church, according to Texas Attorney General, following the worst mass shooting in the state's history. Republican Ken Paxton said churches should consider arming some of the parishioners or hiring security guards following the incident at First Baptist Church in Sutherland Springs, where at least 26 people were killed and many more injured. It's going to happen again, he told Fox News, just hours after the shooting that killed victims aged 5 to 72 dead. We know, of course, that that range is actually 18 months to 77. This article came out pretty quickly after the attack. If more churchgoers were armed, there's always the opportunity that the gunman will be taken out before he has the opportunity to kill very many people, he said. We've had shootings in churches for forever. It's going to happen again, and so we need people in churches, professional security, or at least arming some of the parishioner or the congregation so they can respond if something like this, when something like this happens again. Churches are favorite targets of mass shooters. Take Dylan Roof, the infamous Charleston murderer who killed 9 people. Or Emmanuel Sampson, the man who killed 1 parishioner and wounded 6 others before accidentally shooting himself while struggling with a heroic member of that church. That person then retrieved his own gun from his car, a gun for which he had a concealed carry permit, and held it on Sampson until police arrived. One can only imagine how many of the other 50 people at that service would have been hurt or even killed had that man not intervened. One of my firearm instructors has a successful security business. Some of his customers are Illinois churches who want to know how best to arrange for armed security at their respective houses of worship. It seems Texas is not alone in wanting a safe environment for its churchgoers, nor should it be. So what about the political fallout from the Sutherland shooting? There's been plenty, of course, as there always is following a headline-grabbing event involving guns in the U.S., especially evil black guns like Kelley's Ruger 5.56. I'd like to take a small bite out of that shit sandwich, one made by Democratic U.S. Senator Christopher Scott Murphy of Connecticut. Here's Senator Murphy's tweet, responding to Jim Hansen at Uncle Jimbo, who had stated, "Can you sleep knowing the killer was already banned from owning guns, and all you could do is disarm the citizen whose legal gun stopped him?" Murphy's response, "Let's be clear, nobody stopped this shooting. 26 people, including little kids, are dead in one of our country's worst mass killings." That is a tweet with over 8,300 retweets and 27,000 likes. Nice, Senator Murphy. As I previously stated, it's entirely possible Kelley was not finished killing people that Sunday. He could well have been on his way to his mother-in-law's home after not seeing her in the church he shot up, back to his own home to attack his immediate family, and/or perhaps to take on whatever targets of opportunity that presented themselves. There's no way of knowing for now, but Murphy's abject lack of reasonable thinking skills proves how partisan politics have no basis in logic, no matter the side. Finally, I want to remember some of the fallen from the First Baptist Church of Sutherland. people who had done nothing wrong and couldn't have possibly conceived of what would happen to them while they enjoyed the fellowship of their faith. Lula, I believe that's Wojciechowski White. Lula White, 71, was the shooter's grandmother-in-law. A relative of White's confirmed her death to the New York Daily News Monday. Her sister, Mary Mishler Clyburn, told the news her sister was a wonderful, caring person, a God-loving person. Joanne Ward, Brooke Ward, and Emily Garza. Joanne Ward was attending church on Sunday when she and two of her daughters, Brooke Ward 5 and Emily Garza 7, were killed. Their deaths were confirmed to the Dallas Morning News late Sunday. Joanne had 4 children, all of whom were with her at church. One of her daughters survived, and her son, Ryland Ward 5, was also shot, but survived and was rushed to surgery. As of Monday morning, Ryland was in stable condition, according to his aunt, who spoke to the Dallas Morning News. Joanne was such a wonderful mother whose whole life was her children and family, Joanne's uncle, John Alexander, wrote on Facebook Monday morning, "My heart is broken." Annabelle Pomeroy, 14, was the daughter of the church's pastor, Frank Pomeroy. Her parents were out of town, her mother, Sherry Pomeroy, told the AP. They were driving back to Sutherland Springs from Oklahoma, according to ABC. Carla, Brian, Crystal, Emily, Megan, Greg, Mark Daniel, and Noah Holcomb. Sunday's shooting took members of 3 generations from one local family. 8 members of the Holcomb family, one of whom was also 8 months pregnant, were killed when Kelly opened fire on the rows of pews inside the First Baptist Church. Carla and Brian Holcomb had been married for about 40 years and were attending church with their children and grandchildren when they were killed. They were really loving people, Jenna Brown, a friend of the Holcombs, told the Daily Beast. They really were loving people. They were about as close to a true life of Christ as you could get. It's of course going to be difficult, Joe Holcomb, Brian's father, told the Washington Post. But, he added, "We are Christians. We have read the end of the book. We know the ending, and it's good." In my opinion, this tragedy is proof that horrible things can happen to anyone at any time. Devin P. Kelly was a ticking time bomb who had the classic signs of someone destined to hurt many people. He couldn't manage relationships, evident since high school and getting increasingly worse over time. He couldn't hold anything other than menial jobs. Even his Air Force job was low level, and then not for any length of time. And he abused animals, at least one that we know of. I'm willing to bet that wasn't the first time. I also wouldn't be surprised to find out that Kelly always blamed others for his shortcomings. This is pure conjecture on my part, of course. I may well be wrong. His pleading guilty to the charges of domestic abuse during his general court-martial was probably only because he was offered a very lenient sentence and a discharge one step above dishonorable. It's nearly impossible to find employment with what amounts to a federal felony in your history. Reflecting upon the Air Force's treatment of Kelly, I can't begin to understand why they gave him such a sweetheart deal considering the nearly fatal consequences of his actions towards his wife and her son. You'd think breaking a baby's skull and giving him a hematoma would be grounds for a noticeably more severe punishment. That's all for now. Until next time, I mean this most sincerely. Be well, and as always, thank you for your attention.